What is up, podcast land? Welcome to another episode of the Two Dates and a Dash podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cubbler. Before I introduce the amazing, and I've never had a relationship type person on my show, so this will be a first, but I'll tell you what, Carla Romo's, just from the 5 minutes we spent before this, I'm excited to have this conversation with her. But before we introduce her, I want to tell everybody where you can hear the podcast. It's pretty much anywhere. iHeart, Pandora, iTunes, Stitcher, Simplecast, wherever you want to listen to podcasts, I'm sure you can find Two Dates and a Dash. All I ask is that if whatever platform you use, please subscribe to the show through that. And if you have a chance and it gives you the option to click the automatic download, because all that does is save you the time of having to go in and search for shows. They'll automatically download for you, and it helps me as far as my SEO. So I would highly appreciate that. Carla, so how are you?
I am awesome. How are you?
I'm great. So Carla, and everybody knows the show that I don't really do a whole lot of research or homework because I like to be as surprised as the audience. But when we first got connected, I was like, relationship coach, like a dating coach. Like how am I going to have this? I haven't dated since 1994. So, and now mind you, from 18 to 94, I was a complete and utter dog. And I had zero conscience during that period of time. Like it was whatever. I was like a crazed maniac. So I'm curious now to find out what in the last 26 years has changed about dating, because I have no goddamn idea. If God forbid, if my wife, who I love dearly, and I would walk in front of a moving bus for, but God forbid if she ever left me, I'm pretty sure I would just move to Montana, get like 300 acres, a shit ton of like dogs and wildlife, and just stay to myself. I'm pretty sure that's where I would end up.
Sounds a little lonely, not gonna lie.
But there's Facebook, I'm sure, so it would occupy enough of my day.
It's all good. There's Zoom. You can you can have any virtual party, any virtual happy hour, whatever.
We're learning that now, like literally on the fly. Everybody's learning how to be, what if I couldn't X? Well, that's playing out every hour of every day now.
Yes, exactly. 100%.
So before we get started, how are you handling the COVID-19 bullshit?
Yeah, I'm handling it really well. I have my ups and downs. I have compassion. I'm in the state of New York. We are being hit like fucking crazy.
Kicked in the dick. That's what I say.
People that have COVID. I know of people that have COVID. I mean, it's directly affecting me. Every single person that dies is not a number. It is a fucking life. And I appreciate, regardless of politics, Cuomo makes that very known that these are human lives. These aren't just numbers. You look at the comparison to like September 11th, right? It's like, I think they said like nearly close to 3,000 deaths. Now we've got over 7,000 deaths in the state of New York from COVID. I mean, it's real. And I think too, what's important to remember is that this is a traumatic event that is happening as a collective. So technically right now what we are all experiencing is trauma. And I do not believe there's one right or wrong way to do this. Okay. Nobody has the fucking rule book of COVID. Like nobody knows. Right. And so even the people who are judging, who are like, you need to finish this, like, get your projects done, like whatever you're going to put off, like this is your time, like right now. It's like they're just responding the way that they're responding to trauma versus the people who feel like they're shutting down right now. So I don't know, like my thing is like, from my past of growing up with like lots of trauma and experiencing PTSD and things like that from my childhood, I have tools of handling trauma. So I'm continuously working on my self-care, staying on routine. Like I know what it takes to pull myself up and out. And so, I'm fortunate that I've worked through a lot of my shit in the past that I can, do that and work on that right now.
I think that of all the things you just said, the thing that stands out the most as like the greatest nugget you can pull from that is that you have a set of tools that you've worked on, that you've cultivated over the course of your life, that you know exactly how to get yourself out of the shit. And I think exactly. for many people, it's a crapshoot every day. Like they wake up and it's like, well, let's see how it fucking works out. And there's no control level over that. And
yes.
And for me, I'm very similar to you as far as background and understanding how to handle trauma. Mine comes from a completely different perspective. But at the end of the day, it's how do you manage to get yourself in and out of shit is
Yes.
really what it comes down to. Life is about how do you handle the shit when it comes to you? And are you going to get crushed and inundated by it? Or are you going to figure a way to, hold on, I'm going to hold it off. And then there's a crack and find your way out.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And I don't know. I think life always hands you shit, and it's about how you play with it instead of, trying to run away from it or whatever it is, right? It's about how you handle it.
Agreed. All right. So I don't know if you've seen the show or not, but I did give you a little heads up about a minute and a half, which is what I like to do. I ask one question and then the rest we just sort of wing it. I don't have a plan because for me as a cop, when I'm investigating something, I don't have the answer, but I'm at my best when I'm taking, like, that's why I do videos, so I can see your body language and your facial expressions and match them with your words and find out where the passion is and where the truth is and all those things. That helps me do my job better. And it's helped me become a better podcast host by being able to do that. So I ask one question, and the question I ask is broad by design. Who is Carla Romo?
I am fucking Carla Romo.
That's it.
That's it. Boom.
Boom. That's it.
Exactly. Yep. That's who I am.
I love it. Because it's first of all, you gave me absolutely nothing to work with on that, which I love, but you did, which you didn't probably plan on. So when somebody says, I've had many people, when I say who is whatever your name is, they'll go off their list of accomplishments, or they'll go off their titles, or they'll go down the emotional side, which is I'm a seeker of God, or a son, a father, a husband, a brother, whatever. Very few people have just given me, like, I had one person answer that question and it took 41 minutes. There was not a crack for me to get one word in. It was a 41-minute like manifesto, and it was great. Don't get me wrong. It was fucking great.
Sure.
But I was just like, what's happening here? Like, how?
What just happened?
I don't even know what. Like, when he was done, I'm like, I got nothing. I don't even know what to tell you. Like, every question I would have had you answer. Right.
Exactly.
So when I hear somebody say, I am Carla Romo, that's a confidence statement. That's a putting your foot down, drawing a line in the sand and saying, prove me wrong. And what I love about that is it displays your own self-awareness as to who you are, what makes you you, what your passions and wants and needs and desires are. And it also tells me that you have no problem headbutting somebody if need be, which I like. I kind of dig that.
Accurate.
So let's break that down a little bit. People, if anybody goes to your website, which is iamcarlaromo.com, which makes a whole lot of sense for your answer, they're going to see that you're an author, you're a speaker, you're a dating and relationship certified coach. You have a lot of serving type qualities.
Right. 100%. Yep.
Let's knock the first one out. Let's talk about who you are as a person and how you became iamcarlaromo.com.
Yes. Okay. So I have to tell the story real quick of why it is I am Carla Romo. When I started my business, carlaromo.com was too expensive. I was like, I'm not paying like $2,000 for this domain. Right. And then I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I am Carla Romo. And I was like, I'm just going to put it on there. And I'm big on affirmations. Like, I am worthy. I am enough. I am lovable. I am unstoppable. All of those things. Right. And so I was like, you know what? It all just fits. It fits with all of it. So, all right. So how I became I am Carla Romo from way back when. Right. So I had mentioned already with the COVID stuff, like I had experienced trauma, and that was from domestic violence growing up with an abusive father. And I didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel enough. But here's the thing as well. I always felt like, and it's so funny how you said like there's like the headbutt in me. I can stand up for myself, and I can stand up for a million other people at the same time. Like that is one thing that I think, there's actually a lot of things I think that came out of growing up and having trauma, right? Like, I think it is 100% who it made me today. So yes, it was shit to go through it, but I truly believe everything serves a purpose and everything happens for a reason. And so, I didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel enough. I took that out in relationships, right? Hence dating and relationship coach, because there's a light to the end of the tunnel with this. But it's like going in and out of codependent relationships, really just hitting my rock bottom in my early 20s where I was in an abusive relationship. And I, for the first time, saw a way out of it. And that way was choosing myself. It was choosing self-love. It was choosing the relationship with me. It was learning to love who I am. Because once I was able to love Carla Romo, who I am, then I was unstoppable. Like nobody was gonna like fuck with me. Nobody was gonna mess with me, whatever. It was like, I get to make my own choices. I get the power back, right? I don't give anybody else the power over me. And so the statement, I am fucking Carla Romo, right, is about embracing, like, I love how you said it's like the confidence. It's like, this is who I am and I don't care. Like, I'm not bending for anyone anymore like I used to in relationships. I'm compassionate, toward people, but so it's not like I'm a complete like hard ass and don't give a shit kind of thing. But and by the way, I love that you cuss, because I cuss a lot. Like even in my book, I cuss to the point where people have asked me before, like more conservative communities, to please not cuss for my talks. And I'm like, that's fine. I don't have to cuss for the talk, right?
I cussed in a Catholic church youth group in front of the priest. And he nearly, I think he almost like melted in his seat.
Amazing.
And I dropped the F-bomb. And I was like, well, it happened. I don't know what to tell you. There's pretty good chance another one's going to come. I don't know when they come. They just happen.
That is epic. I love that. Oh my God, you're my hero. But literally. So, but that's the thing, is that like, I look at it as like, you have the power once you start owning who you are. Like, you don't give anyone else that power. You don't give any situation, person, place, or thing. I don't care if it walks or it doesn't walk, right? It's embracing who you are, and it's recognizing like, I can do anything. Like, I am unstoppable. There's nothing else that holds power over me. And also having a sense of spirituality of whatever that looks like for you, right? I don't care if it's religious. I don't care if it's, your house plant, the universe, whatever you want to look at as your spiritual source, right? But I think there's something that's important there. Like I said, taking all the shit of what I grew up with, all the trauma, all of that stuff, and realizing that that was just part of my path of where I am today. And that serves me today, of being able to go through all of that and looking back and not seeing it as like, oh gosh, that was shameful. It's embarrassing. It's, whatever it is, right? It's being able to say like, wow, look at what I got through. I want to be able to help others get through that as well.
Real quick, when you have trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and you have that awakening where you said all of a sudden you realize that if I take care of me and I love me and I give myself the attention and time it needs, that will help me be better for others.
Mm-hmm.
When you make your assessments of yourself, because one thing I've mentored kids for years, and one of the things I make sure I help kids know is that there is a limit to your capability, but there's not a limit to your ability. And the things that you can learn how to do and the things that you can give that there's no ending to that. I said, like, I can't run fast. I'm not built for it. I can't jump high. I'm never going to be a pilot because my eyes are shit. Like, there's a lot of things I can't do because my capability doesn't exist in that realm. When you were going through your process of learning who Carla Romo was, did you have those like deep conversations with yourself and said, all right, here's what I'm really fucking good at. These are where I have potential opportunities. And here's where I'm just pretty much shit. And I get it. And I'm okay with that.
100%. And I think, people just stress so much. And even like with kids, like, it's like, focus on your weaknesses. I actually think that's BS. You're wasting your time when you focus on your weaknesses. Instead, you need to focus on your strengths, because ultimately, like, you are here and you have the strength for a reason, and you need to go out and give that gift out to people. And so what I decided is I like helping people, and I like doing it on a mass level. And so that's how I came up with my business, is I want to help people beyond just, I've got clients one-on-one, but beyond just a one-on-one personal thing, but I want to be able to help people in the masses. Well, how can I do that? What does that look like? How do I serve? I love that you said it's like serving. It's true. I feel like my purpose in life is to go through all of that, to be able to give that back and push that back. But I think it's important as well to step back and say, okay, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses, right? What am I good at? I can get up in front of a crowd of people. People always talk about this. They're like, I don't get how you do it, Carla. I could get up in front of 1,000 people. I have. And I've given a speech before, right? And that was like my high school graduation speech, like way, way back in the day, right? Like, I knew already from a young age, and I think everybody does. It's even something I talk about with my clients when they're feeling disconnected from themselves, right? Or they don't know what path to take, or they don't know what excites them anymore, or they don't know what career to take, whatever it may be. Because I don't just talk about dating relationships, right? And so my whole thing is tap into what is that little kid? What did you like? Because when you're a kid, you know exactly what you're good at. And it's somebody who tells you that you're not good that sets you back. Or somebody who tells you how it's supposed to be, how you're supposed to live inside the lines and all of this kind of stuff, what you're supposed to be made of. All of those things, right, I think is what pushes you in the wrong direction. But it's like, if you could just tap back into like that little child again and just say, what is it that excites me? I've always been able to get up in front of people and talk. Like, that's no problem, And so I think I lost a little bit of that in my early 20s. And then I was like, you know what, forget it. Like, I want to be able to help people. I want to be able to take what I had in my past and use it as fuel. And that I know I'm good at. I know I'm able to take all that shit, work through it, and be able to get people through the other side as well.
You said some that really hit home with me, because it was a part of my life where I figured out that exact thing, where I was looking back at who am I and how did I get here and what was my path, and it came when I was writing my book, but I realized, I always thought that I was who I am because of what I was doing. Like, I never took the time to go back and look at the path and see how it all connects. And that life isn't about singular moments. It's about connected moments that get you to different points in your life. And people come in and come out of that process along the way. And I had a friend of mine, son, who's dating and broke up. And I said, she was just the first step towards finding the person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with. I said, she had a value. She just wasn't a forever value. Like, she was there to teach you something. And to teach you something about her and teach you something about you. I said, that's what this is about. But when you said, go back to your kid, I realized that the same things I'm doing today as a 49-year-old adult, I was doing as a 9-year-old kid.
Yep.
And that was validation that I wasn't somehow disguising myself or hiding behind my 6'3", 245-pound frame, a big bald-headed guy. Like, I'm not hiding behind that. I've literally been this person my whole life. So I think that was very insightful what you said about going back and looking at your kid self and what excited you back then.
Well, it's funny because you saying this literally just reminded me of it. So I journaled, right? Because I didn't know how to outlet my feelings. I didn't know what to do with them when I was little. So I just journaled. I just wrote and wrote and wrote. And I have all the diaries and journal entries and all of that stuff with me today. And when I was going through some old journals, I wrote in 7th grade. Okay. It was all about boy drama. All right. Like, I had daddy issues from a very young age, and it came out in relationships, even in middle school. Okay. I write about that in my book as well, like even from like elementary school. So I wrote in 7th grade, maybe I'm going through all of this because it's supposed to be in a book one day and helping people.
Really?
And yes, I mean, I have it. And so I think right there, like, that's why I say, when you're a kid, what you're supposed to do. Like, okay, there's a book called The Alchemist, and I don't know if you've read it.
No, I've heard of it. Okay. We talked about my book.
It's one of your 5. We don't read, right? So, although I have to say, I do read like NPR. Like, I love reading news and like things like that.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't, reading books for me is so difficult. So I've literally only read, like I said to you, like 5 books. But I read The Alchemist twice. And in The Alchemist, they talk about like maktub, which is an Arabic saying and meaning for it's written. Okay. So it's basically saying your life is written. But the book is all about your personal like journey and like your personal legend, like in life, right? And how easily we get knocked off that path, but that it's always in us and it's always available. And I look at this the same way. I mean, like exactly what you just said, what you're doing at 9 years old to what you're doing today, right? And it's like what I was writing about in 7th grade to what I'm doing today. You know, I really believe like we know deep in us. And sometimes we lose a sense of it, right? And it feels really hard to find it. And whoever's listening who's like lost right now and trying to figure out purpose in life is probably like, what is she talking about, right? But it's there. And I don't know. I just believe it's like, think back to your little kid. What is it that inspired you? What got you excited, and start there.
I had a guy on the other day who is a business guy and loves to help businesses. And he created something when he was in high school that they sold, and he made a lot of money off. Like he's known who he was going to be his whole life. And my daughter's wanted to be a teacher since she was a little girl. She used to have all her dolls would be set up and she would teach them. And she knew she wanted to teach little kids. And, my wife wanted to be a teacher growing up, and then her dad's a businessman. So she sort of got into business, and she realized after, spending a lot of money on college and going in a direction that wasn't necessarily in line with what she's always wanted, she did a left hook and went back towards teaching. So, I mean, I think we all on some level, when we fantasize as a kid and think about all the, we all wanted to be a baseball player, a football player. Like there's some things that 1% of 1% will ever get to. But for the most part, you kind of know, if not the job, who you want to be. I always knew since I was a kid, I've been saving people. Like that's literally been, whether it's next door neighbor who was getting beat up by his dad, and I went in and punched his dad square in the stomach, grabbed him, pulled him out, took him to school, and told the guidance counselor he's getting beat up at home. Like that was elementary school. So like I knew from an early on that I needed to help people. That's always been my goal. So when you look back, and when I give my talks to people, I always say the best exercise anyone can ever do is to have a revisionist look on your life. Go back and walk yourself through the entire process of how you got to where you are. And you'll see whether or not it all connects, or maybe you're outside here and need to get back into the line of where you were before. And it's such a revealing, and sometimes it's scary because you're exactly where you thought you would be. And you're like, holy shit, how'd that work? Or you're completely off and you got to find your way back. And that's when somebody like you or someone who's a life coach or something like that can help sort of bring you back in line.
Yeah. And I just think too, it's like, but that's life. We all get knocked off, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's the beautiful thing about life is instead of looking at when we feel knocked off, like this is it, this is the end all be all. It's like, look up at the sky or whoever your higher power is, or, whatever it is, spiritual source, and say, okay, what are you showing me? Right? Well, instead of why me, it's like, what are you showing me? What is this serving for me? Like, where am I missing in my own, like, goggles of what I want to see? What am I missing? Like, show me what it's supposed to be, what it's supposed to look like.
I think the seeker mentality is really important. When you let life happen to you instead of taking control of life and making life happen for you, is a really different. It's just a simple shift of perspective and awareness. And as a cop, my entire life's about being aware of things that don't fit and the anomalies and people say it's profiling, but I can tell you I know the block on my street that everyone that lives there is white. And at 3:00 in the morning, somebody who's black is walking out from between two houses. That stands out. I'm going to stop him and talk to him and find out why he's there. It has nothing to do with black or white. It has to know with set of circumstances instead of known facts and what is different about those facts. And that's just life. That's just figuring out where you fit in certain periods of your life, because it changes. It's an evolution, and hopefully it's a growing process there, and not a stagnant process where you're in the same rut. And usually people that are in a rut aren't asking the question to their higher power, to anyone else, what am I missing? What am I not seeing that's right in front of me? And I wrote in my book during my period of depression after my brother died, which was about 13 years, I felt nothing but anger and hate. And I had a baby, got married. I understood the logic of love, and that this is love because I do want to be with this person, but I didn't have that emotional connection to my daughter, to my wife. But what I realized is that when I came out of that, looking back with an open mind and clear eyes, that there were so many opportunities for growth that I didn't take because I didn't see them. And my brother's hand was on the door with me, telling me to turn it, and I didn't because I was too afraid to be happy because I was so angry about him being dead. And it's this, when you get through that, just like you did through your childhood traumas, once you get through that and you see that with clarity, and you come to terms with the fact that you shit the bed for 13 years and life wasn't fair and all those other questions and pissed off shit that you have, and you go, what did I learn from that? That's when the perspective shifts.
Yeah. If you can look at life as the teacher, right? And you're the student, you're just learning the lessons throughout life. And I think another thing too, I'm going to get really philosophical here. Okay. But I think the other thing too, and I'm not a religious person, I'm very spiritual. I have a higher power. It's my own understanding, but other than that, I don't know about it. Right. Like that's my extent to it. But I'm very connected with it. But my whole thing is that, nobody really knows why we're here, right? Like nobody knows why. We all go by these rules that we've created, and there's a systemic, rule and like hierarchy and like all this stuff that we just kind of follow into. We all just shuffle in, right? And so my whole thing is when I decided to switch out of working in television, that was my first career, right? And really fuel my purpose into starting my business. I said to myself, if I were to die tomorrow, would I be pissed that I didn't start my business? And the answer was yes. I would be so pissed off at myself if I just dropped dead. And so I decided, what are you doing now? Right? Like, you don't know when your time is to go. Like, you don't know. And when your time is your time is your time, right? Like, we don't know when that is. And so my whole thing is why do we stop ourselves, right, from really living and living out the things that we want to do? And why do we take our, old stories is what I call them, right? Things from the past that happened to us and just live with them and what I call future trip into the future and let that dictate the way we live our life, right? And so it's when you're able just to break out of that, right, and let those old stories go, you create the path for your life. Right? You create how you want to put one foot in front of the other. And I just think there's something just so powerful to think about that question I asked myself, which some might think, God, that's pretty drastic, right? But I'm kind of a go big or go hard kind of person. So, that fits well with me. But
I love it.
But I just think about, like, if I were to die tomorrow, would I be happy with what I'm doing? The answer is yes. Do I want to die tomorrow? Hell no. Like, I don't want to fucking die tomorrow. But the answer is I'm doing everything I ever wanted to in life. Like I'm and if it's not complete, I'm working toward it, and that to me feels so fulfilling. Like that gives me a sense of purpose, is to just try, and if I don't try, that's fear. That's my old stories. That's whoever told me in the past I wasn't good enough, I couldn't do it, or whatever it was, right? But and I actually think it's our own worst critic, where we are our own worst critic. Like it starts with us. Like we're actually the ones that tell ourselves we're not good enough. Somebody just on the outside reinforces that. Yep. And so we just are paralyzed. We don't do anything, right? But it's like, if you can just let go of that shit, right? And I'm telling you, I have moments where I question, what am I doing? It's entrepreneurship, it's like, shit, like, what am I doing? Oh God, I'm crazy. I can't, and then I have moments of, oh my gosh, this is amazing, right? It's this like little up and down, up and down. But that's what I mean by enjoying it. Like that's what life is looking at it as like, you're the student and life, is the teacher to you. And it's kind of fun. It's kind of an adventure. You can just look at it as like, I don't know what I'm going to get, but I'm going to participate and I'm going to do it the best way that I can.
One of the things, and you brought up if I died tomorrow, and I literally have that conversation every day with myself. And so when my brother died, my brother was autistic and had a severe stutter, and he didn't have friends. I was the younger brother by almost 3 years, but I was the older brother by proxy. And but he didn't have anybody call and invite him out to play or anything like that. And every summer from 9th grade till he graduated, which was 6 years later, he worked at a summer camp. It was a Christian summer camp, and he would cut grass and do stuff, and he lived there all summer. We would see him on the weekends, but I was never part of that environment. So the brother I knew had no friends. He would go to camp, come back in August. He seemed better. but I didn't know anything. I didn't know the context. And I never asked, which I regret. But when he died, there were like 1,000 people at his funeral. And I remember vividly thinking to myself, who the fuck are all these people? And why are they here? And I lived with that haunt of unknown, like where was the connection? Who were all these people? And it wasn't until 13 years later when I realized that those were all the people that my brother touched at this camp, and other people, but for the most part, these were families and kids and campers and staff and parents and who my brother touched. And had I known, if I would have just asked the goddamn question and asked him, how was your summer? Who were these people? Did you meet anybody? I didn't ask them those questions. I just assumed my brother went away to camp, cut some grass, came home. And if I would have just asked, I would have known the answer to that question already. And I wouldn't have spent 13 years thinking my brother died too soon and that he didn't live and that he didn't get a chance to fully materialize everything I believed he could be, when in fact, he did it all in those 21 years, but I never knew that. And what I've realized is that what you're doing with helping people and through coaching and all that stuff, you're leaving those people who were, if timing works out right, are all going to be at your funeral one day, and they're going to say thank you to the spirit of you, and that's your legacy, and that's what living for me personally is about, is how many people can I impact, whether I know it or don't know it, and how many things can I possibly do that allows me to do that as many times and in many different ways as possible, so that when and if tomorrow is my last day, did I do enough? And the answer is going to be yes every day, because that's the plan. So that's kind of where my take on what you just said lives in me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love what you just said. It's like making the impact on each person. Right. And I think that, it reminds me of that movie. Why can't I think of it? It's like the Day of the Dead movie. It's a Disney movie, but it's like, you know how Disney makes movies for adults, but
Right.
really
Right.
I can't think of the name of it, but it's so cute. And it, it's about, the Mexican culture and the Day of the Dead and all of that. And so the idea is that, like, the way that they celebrate the holiday is, they put the pictures of the deceased ones like up. And the idea is that you don't want to forget somebody, because once somebody's forgotten, then, you're just not nothing anymore. And it kind of makes me think about what you just said about how it's like touching all these different people's lives. Right. And I think that is life itself, because at some point, right, maybe 200 years from now, there's still going to be humans, as long as global warming doesn't kill us, right? There's still going to be humans, and they're going to be walking around, and there's going to be people who are trying to create, that impact. And I think that is the basic level of humanity, is connection, right? It's like the number one desire of humans is to connect. We all want to feel connected. It's why people kill themselves, right? Is because of isolation, because they aren't connected, right? They feel like they don't have a purpose, that they're a burden, right? They're disconnecting, right? With mental, and I understand it's mental illness. I don't look at it as it's like a choice kind of thing. I get people have mental illness. But I look at that as, it's the way that we connect as humans, and that, something I truly believe is, like, we all do well when we are together. Like, I don't believe that as humans, we are supposed to be on our own, just doing our own thing. And it makes me think about your brother, right? Where it's like, he's one person, but yet he was connected to all these people. And that is something you can't always see, right? But it's a feeling. And, like, I think that's also what gives us, our name as humans, right? Is that, like, we can feel feelings. And I think that, with connection, you have love, you have belonging, like all of those things that you can't always see, but you can feel. It's this unspoken language.
I totally agree. And it's a gift and a curse sometimes to be connected. Mm-hmm. And it's sometimes difficult to manage connectivity, because in a public world, if you're on social media and you're followers or your speaker, people know who you are and you wrote a book or whatever, people want to be connected with you, but you don't always know how that connection works. And you don't always know whether or not the connection is genuine or whether or not it's necessary. I don't want to say it. Where's the meaning behind, like, I get people all the time that'll message me on video posts I do, whatever. And I want to be as receptive as possible, but then it becomes, there's a line that sometimes has to be drawn, and connectivity in real life, human connection, where I know you and we see each other and we physically are in the same room, is completely different than a connectivity on social media. And I think that's where, as a human race, we've sort of slipped into this dimension where social media connectivity is the same as human to human connectivity, and it's just not.
No, I agree. It's not actually the same at all. I would even argue that what drives connection, okay, hold on. Let me phrase it this way. People who are putting out, right, on a platform, things, photos, whatever, I would say that a lot of the thing that is driving that isn't necessarily connection, but it's ego driven.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm talking about either great ego or bad ego, right? We think about narcissism as like this high ego, you're great, you're amazing, kind of personality, right? Or there's ego, which I'm so worthless, I'm not enough, like those types of egos. And I'd say both play into it. Whereas I'm not worthless, or I'm worthless. I'm not worth a lot. So I'm going to post this picture and I hope I get likes. How many likes am I going to get? I mean, I've had friends who deleted posts before because they didn't get enough likes, right? And so my thing is that I look at that as that's ego driven. It's not right or wrong, but that's not true connection, right? True connection is being able to put, like, for example, on my Instagram, I'm like 100% genuine. Like, I will post quotes. I will post things that I think, does this help me? And if it can help me, then I post it. So that's always my filter to connect with people, right? Is what does this help me? Do I benefit from it? That is the first person I want to benefit from it, is me. And if I can do it, then I hope at least one person can get something from it. That's always my motto. If one person gets something from it, I did my job, right? Of connecting, of posting. But I would say, like, I completely agree with you that when you're on social media or whatever it is, online, whatever apps, you're not connecting like you are in person. And like, that is especially with what's happening with COVID, right? Like, all of this stuff there's a reason that you feel maybe a little more isolated, unless you're a police officer going to work, right? But there's a reason that, if you are used to being social, like, I'm an extreme extrovert. If you couldn't tell, now you know, right? And my thing is like, it has been difficult. I haven't been able to physically be, talking to people, whatever. I mean, I live with my partner, but like that, that only brings you so far as an extrovert, right? When you don't have a whole group of people, to hang out with. So I think when it comes to social media, I would say that what actually disconnects us is ego. And I think that drives a lot of quote unquote connection, which is really disconnection. Because if you're doing it to serve an insecurity within yourself, then your motives are going to feel disconnected to people. Yeah. If you're doing it from a motive because it's helped me and I want to help others, or I want to share this to be able to help anybody who maybe is struggling or can see this the way I did, or even a different perspective of it, then I'd say that's a way of connecting on social media.
I agree. I have a rule, and I learned it from my business partner. He had it on his whiteboard in the office, and it said, if it's not helping you, it's hurting you. And that's a very basic, broad statement. But when you think about anything, and kids I mentored, athletes I train, I'm like, listen, I call him my nephew. I'm pretty much his father figure, and he's a 26-year-old pro rugby player, and he's had relationship issues, and he's like, we're always going around the same circle. And I'm like, listen, I don't know what to tell you, but if it's not helping you, it's hurting you. And if she isn't helping you become a better you, then she's ultimately hurting you. So therefore, you have to remove that. And at some point in time, you put enough good things around you to help lift you up and propel you, so that you don't have, even if you care about her, and even if she cares about you, if it's not helping you, it's hurting you. And if it's causing you pain, then it's not helping you.
Mm-hmm. Something I talk about with my clients all the time is boundaries. Like, and people pleasing. Oh my God, so many. I mean, I always say I'm a recovering people pleaser. I mean, once a people pleaser, I think you're always kind of have that in you, where you want to get approval from people, or you want to make sure nobody's upset with you. Those types of motive driven decisions around, like, okay, like I can't tell the person no or whatever because they're gonna get upset with me. And it's like, but you just created a whole story in your head. And it's back to that giving people power, right? So when you just say yes to something, it's an example I always use when I do talks. Like I'll say, raise your hand if you've ever felt like you didn't want to go somewhere, but you said yes because you kind of felt bad to say no. And everybody will raise their hand. I mean, I don't know anyone who hasn't experienced that, right? But it's when you get to that place where it's so out of whack, right? Like literally to the point where you are just saying yes to everything, you're then neglecting yourself, right? And it goes back into what you were saying, where it's like, it's hurting you. It's no longer like helping you, right? And I don't believe, look, I always talk about balance and wanting to have a balanced life, but I don't believe balance actually exists. I feel like you're always being pulled into one direction, and it's just a way to correct. That's it. Like, it's like you overcorrected in one area, okay, overcorrect in this area. And it's just kind of life. It's just the flip flop of life, right? I think balance is a utopia, to be completely honest. I mean, it would be amazing if we all had, perfect balance, but nobody has that rule book in life, right? So it's about figuring out what at least makes you happy, right? And if it's taking away your happiness, or it's making you feel obligated and you don't want to do something, it's like right there, like you got to put yourself first. You've got to put up those boundaries, even if you will let the person down. Because ultimately, if you're not going to let them down, you're letting yourself down. And I always talk about like the most important relationship with anybody is with yourself, okay? And that's because it sets the tone of any relationship that you're ever going to have. And so you teach people how to treat you, right? Where it's, if you're going to treat yourself shitty and just keep saying yes to things and like whatever, you're going to keep doing that, right? It's until you take a stand for yourself and you're like, wait a minute, hold on. Like I need to do me. Like I need to work on myself and kind of silence whatever's out here. And it's like, once you can do that, you can find the freedom and the happiness.
That's so important. And I'm curious, when you're, we've been talking a lot of generic life tips, right? Mm-hmm. When you're specifically, and you're working in the dating and relationship aspect of your business, do you have the fundamental principles of life and relationship, whether it's dating in that realm, or just friends or relatives or whatever the case might be? Or is there a specific set of rules and principles that you use specifically for relationships and dating?
I'd say I use specific things, but I would say you can transfer them to any relationship with money, relationship with your family, right? But I would say it starts the foundation of self-love. That is 100% what I coach behind, men and women that I've coached, okay? Is that it starts with you and how much you value yourself, because you set the standard, you set the rules around your beliefs of yourself. So if your beliefs are, I'm a piece of shit, I'm worthless, I'm not lovable, I'm going to get cheated on again, I'm just going to be in the same type of relationship over and over again, whatever it may be, right? The stuff that we tell ourselves, you are going to take action around it, because your thoughts are going to become powerful to the point where you believe it, that it's true, that this is who you are, and then you're going to take action around it. So it's until you can get straight with yourself and how much you love yourself and how much you care about yourself, and really honor that through boundaries, right? Through spirituality, or following your gut is what I say, like your intuitive feeling. Like I'm sure the gut feeling being a police officer, like when things feel off and when things
controls
are right.
Every aspect of my life.
Exactly. Yes. And it's so important, right? To like guide around that and to actually take action around it. So for example, it's like I have clients who get into relationships that are codependent or toxic or whatever you want to call it. And I always ask them, did you know from the beginning of that relationship that maybe something was off? And they'll say yes. And I say, where do you feel it? And they said, my gut, it felt off, but I just convinced myself and told myself that, no, I made an excuse. It wasn't right. It wasn't whatever, right? And I always tie that back with yourself, because if you love yourself enough to say, hold on, I love you too much to even put yourself in this danger, right? There's a reason my gut is alarming. I'm not going to be in denial. I'm not going to make excuses for this person. I'm going to have a real come to Jesus moment with me, right? Then you stop that, right? You stop that pattern, that behavior, going after something that could be harmful, right, for yourself. So I coach around the principle of self-love. Like that's everything. And then from there, I always say it's like, I talk about this in my book, Contagious Love, where it's like you're a seed and the roots are like spirituality, relationships, career, life, right? But you are the seed, and whatever you water the seed with is the way it's going to grow. So if you're watering your seed with, I'm not enough, I'm not lovable, you're not going to feel rooted. You're going to have brown shit come at the top, right? Sprouting through, like looking dead. And then a storm's going to come, AKA a breakup, a divorce, a argument, whatever. And it's going to rip you out and tumble you away, right? You have no foundation. But if you take your seed and you water it with, I'm enough, I'm lovable, I'm worthy, I am okay, you know, unstoppable, whatever you want to put in there, then you're going to have the foundation. You're going to have healthy roots. You're going to have this awesome badass flower that's going to grow, right? And it's going to flourish. And so when that storm comes, because life happens, right? Life happens. You're going to have storms in life. That's a guarantee. When that storm happens, it just tugs at you. It doesn't uproot you and blows away, right? You have that foundation. And so that's really, I mean, ultimately, I believe that's the secret, really, to successful relationships, to successful dating life, to getting through a breakup in a healthy way.
That's awesome. As you're talking, I'm visualizing the roots and holding you in. And so, I mean, most people are visual and auditory learners. And for me, I was able to picture, and a good book, and not that I have a whole lot to draw from, but the one I wrote and the few that I've read, people say that, like, with my book, that they could picture the scenes of my life and hear my voice explaining them. And when you're a coach or a writer or a speaker, your power comes from your, I hate using the word vulnerability, and your what's the other catchword word, authenticity, because those are catchwords, but fucking be real and let people feel you.
Yes.
And when people, you know, I share, obviously my story's sad at times, and I literally can relive that moment as if it happened the day that it happened every time I give a talk. And people say, how can you do that? I said, because that's how much I miss my brother. Like, that's how much I loved him, that I never want to forget how that felt. And as many times as I can relive that validates that he's still here. Like, that's not a weakness. That's a superhuman strength that I have, that I can relive that, be okay with it, share it in front of hundreds of people, and then move on. Like, I have control over that. And that's one of the greatest gifts that I've learned, is how to control the things that are within my control, you know, my wife, my kids, my business, whatever. And that I've learned to assess the uncontrollable and put it in sort of like a triage, and go, okay, most serious, we're going to knock that fucker out first and figure it out. Like, it's when you get lost in, you know, the forest or the trees analogy. It's when you're in the weeds, it's hard to get out of anything. And especially in today's environment where, you know, and we talked about it beforehand, that I like to make funny, poignant posts that really say something, but they sound kind of funny when I do it. But I put on Facebook last week, I guess was a week before that, after reading everybody's social media posts and their videos and their memes and everything, I know exactly, if we all went to prison, who was going to be the bitch and who was going to run the yard. I know every one of them, and I have utmost confidence in my reading of that. But the bitch can become the guy that runs the yard. Like, you can figure out how to get out of that spot and figure out how to be the one in control. And I think that's what people like you do by creating those processes that they can implement into their life and create the boundaries and the self-affirmations and all those things that you talked about.
Yeah. And I think too, what you were saying, like when somebody's in the weeds, right, it can be hard to get out. Well, I always say, don't expect to run, 60 miles in the forest and expect to get out right away. You have to, slowly get yourself back through those 60 miles on the way out, but to know you will eventually get out of the forest. And I think that's the other thing too, is that there's such this need right now for instant gratification. Everything's so quick, technology, whatever. But when you're really talking about growth and you're really talking about change and making a difference and getting yourself, out of the forest, out of the weeds, whatever it may be, It takes time, but the thing is that every single fucking day counts. So if you do not take every single day serious, you will still be stuck in there, right? And you're going to be banging your head against the wall and be like, I just don't get it. Why am I not here already? Well, the answer is in right now. It's in today. What are you doing? What are the little things that you're doing? And I always say, don't get to the end, right? Like, don't and I talk about this to clients, like, don't worry about the relationship, because at the end of the day, the relationship isn't the end all be all. It's the journey that it took for you to get there, right? It's what you learned. It's what you contributed to every single day. I talk about that with dating. Like, it's not the date, right? It's like, oh, people come to me, oh, Carla, I can't date. Like, I don't know, I can't get on a date, or I only get on one date and it just doesn't go well. Like, I don't know how to do it, right? And I say, what's your strategy to get the date? Because the date is the end goal that you're talking about, right? You're looking at a finished product, right? What really matters is every single little step that took to get to that date, right? And it can seem so small, so simple to be like, oh, that's it, right? But I feel like our minds want to go to safety. It wants to go to, I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm secure, I'm going to be taken care of, whatever, I need it now, right? Where if you can learn to slow the mind down and recognize that's just the fear talking, right? What is it that you can do? And talk about the control. I have control to do my part. And I always say my part, right? Like, you never know. Look, even in a relationship, you don't know what your partner's going to do, right? You don't have control over that. All you have is how you show up to the relationship, how you want to engage in the relationship, right? And if you keep showing up and you keep doing your best, most likely that person, if you're in a healthy relationship, is going to engage together too, right? But it's the way you do it. It's the way that you show up every day. And so it's getting out of that fear mentality. Oh, my partner's going to leave me. This is it, whatever. And it's like, what can you do right now? Stop getting to the end result, whether it's you're going to break up and it's going to be over with this person, or I need it to be official. I need to, have this relationship set in stone. Where's the ring? Exactly. Where's the ring? All of those things that a lot of times people get there and they think, why am I still not satisfied? Why am I still repeating the same mistakes? I call it dating insanity, is dating a different person with a different face, but same type of person expecting different results. Like that's dating insanity, but the thing is that it takes work. It takes day in and day out to really make those changes, and to focus on those days and not the end product, because that's where I truly believe the change and the happiness can come from.
I think that's brilliant. And it's a microcosm for life. I mean, it's literally, and I hate to pick on the millennials, but the millennials who want, I graduated college, now I need to be a vice president of a company. Like it's the steps to get there are no longer part of the mental belief system. It's like, what are you talking about? I'm not going to be making $100,000. And in police work, and this is just kind of a microcosm of it, police work used to be a calling. It used to be a blue collar job where guys who grew up in a neighborhood would go and become cops in that neighborhood because they know that neighborhood and the people respect them and they can keep law and order. And that's how the job was, whether you're in a big city or in a small town. Now it's become a profession. And the problem with professions is it's one of many different choices. Mm-hmm. And we have people that become cops who've never been in a fist fight, never smoked a joint, never had their nose broken, never, did anything that the job's going to require, but they like the fact that it has a great pension plan and it's got, you get to wear a badge and have a gun and you get out of tickets and get free coffee. So, I mean, it's like this idealism of what the job is. And then they get in the job and they suck ass at it. But then they're not going to go anywhere else because they like the cool stuff about it, but they actually are shitty cops. And that's what brings down the entire image of law enforcement, because you have a bunch of guys that should have probably went into, cell phone sales who are now carrying a gun and making life and death decisions when they have nothing to base it off of.
Yes.
And that's that unrealistic expectation of life. And it is a hard, complicated Rubik's Cube that requires patience and joy and a little bit of balls, and you have to have a healthy respect for life. Mm-hmm. Like understanding that tomorrow might end, it might be over. Right. I don't know, but it might, and you have to have that a little bit on the back of your head so that when you make decisions, it's not, oh, I'll just figure it out tomorrow. And that's exactly what you were talking about. You've got to live in each moment to get to the point where you want to get that ring on it or whatever the case might be.
Mm-hmm. Because the future really doesn't matter, and neither does the past. I mean, literally, right? Like, I think it's good to think about the future. You need goals, but it's not having a goal that's going to get you there. It's taking it and creating the bite-sized pieces, right? Taking the cookie and biting away at it, right? And that's how you get the result. And so it's this idea that life is about events. It's about making it. And once you do that, you'll feel a certain way. It's like, if you don't feel a certain way now, how are you going to feel that way in the relationship? Right? I just need a partner to feel happy. It's like, if you don't feel that now, you are not going to feel that in the relationship. And something that you said actually made me think about that, where you said you were depressed for 13 years, right? You got married, you had kids. I'm sure children, and I'm sure the marriage made you have joy, right? Like there is a certain part of connection, whatever. But is it what cured and what got you through the depression in a sense, because you had those life events?
No. But what happened for me was I was already broken. Like I had lost my belief in God. I'd lost belief in life. I'd lost belief in love. I'd lost belief in relationships, because the only person that I felt I was put on this earth to protect was my brother, and he died, and I failed. And I always had that as part of my identity, was I was his protector, and I needed to have purpose, and that was my purpose. And once the purpose was gone, I was trying to fill that missing purpose with a bunch of other things that were not giving me the same sense of accomplishment and responsibility and love and connectivity that I had with my brother. It just wasn't going there. And it's not that those things weren't important for me to be doing, but I never was able to get past the point of hatred, anger, and pissed off at God and everyone else because he's not here. And just to give you, so what had happened was, and this is going to get a little deep, but so the week my brother died, I was staying at a friend's house. He was staying at my grandmother's house. My mom and stepfather were away on vacation. He was 21, but he couldn't go out on his own or anything like that. So my grandmother was washing his clothes and, doing all the stuff she would normally do, and he dies. 13 years later, after my son's born, who I named after my brother. I had my grandmother and a few other people over to the house to see the baby, and she gave me a gift. And long story short, it was a quilt. And I gave it back to her, and I said, "This obviously isn't for me, because I don't like quilts. There's nothing about a quilt that is going to make me go, wow." So, and my grandmother gave me that look that I'd seen a lot of times when I fucked up. She said, "Well, you look at it." And I looked at it, and I opened it up, and it's yellows and whites and blues and teddy bears. And what had happened was she had kept his clothes for 13 years and had them turned into that quilt. And that was the first time I ever had anything of my brother's in my hands that was on his body. So that was like this overwhelming feeling of connectivity. And so much so that I went down and wrote 26,000 words of memories and cried for 8 hours. But that was the first time I'd ever had an emotional moment in 13 years. Not my wedding, not my daughter's birth. I had blocked off all access to that. And that was what brought me out of that cycle. I knew I was in the cycle. It's not like I was in this denial. That I knew exactly where I was at. I was on the hamster wheel and I couldn't get off. So, but yeah, that was all those things I did during those 13 years were all very good things. I accomplished a lot of things. I just didn't have an appreciation for any of it.
Yes. And I love that you said about the hamster wheel. Most of us are aware. It's whether or not we do something about it. And what you had said about, it was the first time you felt that emotion, right? You got emotional about it. I just told a client this today, literally on our call a couple hours ago. I said, if you don't allow yourself to feel happiness, you're not going to allow yourself to feel sadness. And if you don't allow yourself to feel sadness, you're not going to allow yourself to feel love. We cannot filter in which feelings we want to feel. So when you shut down it all, right? You shut down the connection, you shut down the love, like the full potential of it, right? I do believe you can still let some love in, but it's not that satisfying love, that satisfying connection, but you have to be able to allow yourself to feel the sadness too.
100% agree. Real quick transition before we end the show. your book. I want to know how you came to write your book, and when was, like, obviously I told you how mine happened. I always love hearing from especially from somebody who's like me, who doesn't like to read. How did you come up to write a book?
So as my mom says, Carla, the one thing I never thought you would do is write a book because you don't like to read. And so I just always, like I said earlier, it's like 7th grade. I always just felt like it was in me. I don't know how else to, it's just spiritual. That's really all I can go back to. It's just my intuitive feeling, that gut feeling, spirituality, being guided down the path, always feeling like all of the things that I was going through was going to serve a purpose to be able to help others. That was it. That is the most basic, pure level of it all. And so I was sitting there chatting with a friend, getting coffee a little bit ago, like, oh, it was like a year and a half ago. And I said, I just want to go more in depth with my business. People think dating and relationship coaching, and all they think is, oh, you just help people pick out their profile pictures. I said, no, there's so much more than that. Like, yes, eventually I'd get there with them, but that's like later on, or maybe it's the first session, but eventually we get into the heavier stuff, like the self-love piece, those types of things, behavior patterns that you keep doing and going back to, all of those types of things, right? And all of a sudden I just said, why haven't I written this book? When I started my business, and I have it in my journal entry, this was another journal entry, okay? A couple years ago, I said, I want to get certified to be a life coach. I want to do public speaking, and I want to write a book. And that was my moment of clarity that I needed, that purpose of, okay, you're going to break away from working in television because this is where you feel that your purpose lies, right? And so I broke away from all of that. I had started my business. I was doing public speaking. And then I realized, I forgot about the book. I let that sit for a little bit. But timing's always right? Every timing is always right. And I always look at it as it's always the perfect time now. So I just very much Carla Romo style, all right? I was like, fuck this. If I'm going to do it, like I said, I go big or go home. I was like, I'm going to fucking do it. I wrote the book in 5 months, literally got it finished, edited, everything. And this wasn't just, I hired editors, all those types of things. It wasn't just like just kind of wrote the book and then just printed it. Like, I fucking did it. Like, that's my thing. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to fucking do it. So I did it all, wrote the book, packaged it, and then since I've been doing book signings, and I did a little mini book tour around the US, and I hit up LA and Maryland and Rochester and Indianapolis. And I've just been doing talks around it and getting it out there. And it feels so fulfilling, and it feels so right. Like, it really fucking does. And so I don't know, it's just like another thing too. If somebody's listening right now and they just want that inspiration or that okay to go, like, fucking do it, right? Like, do it. And even if it's going to come years after, like I said, a couple years ago was when I wrote in there, this is all the things I want to accomplish with my business. Like, I did it. I'm doing it. It's like, if I were to die tomorrow, back to that question, would I be fulfilled? Yes, I would. Do I want to die tomorrow? Hell no. But I would be fulfilled.
I love it. I fucking love it. It's, I love someone who has the self-confidence and the balls to just seize the moment. And it's not about right or wrong or success or failure. It's just about, are you willing to put yourself out there with enough confidence in yourself and your own ability to do something that you're willing to accept whatever that outcome is, because otherwise it's a no outcome. There's nothing that comes from that other than wanting or wishing or regret. And I think that's a fantastic trait to have.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, I'd love to. I could do another hour of this. Unfortunately, I'm not sure my listeners are going to put up for it too. I'm not Joe Rogan yet, so I'm not sure they're.
You remind me of Joe Rogan. I was thinking that. I was like, this guy kind of reminds you of Joe Rogan a bit.
Well, thank you. One of the guys, I think it was a guy that wrote, because there's not a whole lot of girls I know are listening to Joe Rogan, but in one of my iTunes, I think it was, iTunes comments on the podcast, he said he's no Joe Rogan, but give him time. I'm like, I'll fucking take it. I'm good.
All right.
But what you're saying is there's a chance.
Yes.
So yeah, I love that. I love the I just like big bald people that just identify moments and say, fuck it, I'm going for it. And that's a rarity. At least it appears to be a rarity these days. And I think the more people that are sharing their story of how they did that, and they're, Yes, it's scary. Yes, it sucks being an entrepreneur. Yes, there are highs and lows, and there are certainly doubts that creep in every single day. But when you look at the whole thing and you look at the whole picture of what you've done since you made that choice to leave television to start your own business, as many sucky days as there were, those moments where you have a client say, I don't know how I would have done this without you, or uh, somebody reading your book saying you've completely changed my life, or one of those things. Those are the things that make it all work. Because even at the end of the day, if you don't make a goddamn penny at it, your effort level, and fuck, 90% of life is effort, is through the roof, and your ability to impact and influence lives, whether it's 10 or 10,000, made the entire decision worth it.
Absolutely. And my whole thing was, my philosophy, if I can help one person with this book, I've done my job. And I've had many hundreds of people tell me I've helped them.
Awesome. Well, hang tight. We'll talk off the air. I want to close the show. Everybody, thank you again for listening to this episode of the 2 Dates in a Dash podcast. Thank you to Carla Romo, the amazing author, coach, speaker, F-bomb dropping, big, bald, risk-taking woman that she is. I love her. We're now best friends. Thank you, guys. You can visit her. I'm going to put all your social media stuff and all your website stuff, but I am Carla Romo. If you don't remember that from the very first statement she made, IamCarlaRomo.com. You can go there to get anything you want about her, social media, book, all that kind of stuff. If you want to learn more about me, mine's just simply my name. I am Matt Cubbler. It's just mattcubbler.com, because no one else on the planet has my last name, and no one really wants it. So if you want to learn more about me and my book and things I'm doing, you can go there as well. Thank you, everybody. God bless, and go out and be kind to one another.